Dear students, welcome to Trap for Rats. Topics and recent advances in pathology. This is mainly meant for the postgraduate students. And I hope we shall continue with our venture. The topic for the day is follicular neoplasms of thyroid, the diagnostic criteria by Annie Mary McNacall. Also included as references would be Ackermann surgical pathology. I would like you people to be very diligent in your attention. At the same time, we shall recall what Robbins has always said. It is better to understand a little than to misunderstand a lot. The structure of the thyroid needs no repetition. Follicles filled with colloid and the C cells. Coming to the introduction of today's topic, most of the lesions of the thyroid are non-neoplastic or benign. Sometimes there may be a dominant nodule or an adenoma, which again come under the benign category. What are the histological changes in an FNAC? What are the mixed follicular and medullary variants? What is the hyalinizing trabecular tumor, etc. shall be the highlights of today's class. Knowing what you are doing, that is what is called as task definition. This particular author has done a splendid job, though it is given extravagantly in Ackermann. These have been covered, and I would like you people to ponder, pause, recollect, and analyze whatever you people know about these. Starting from the fine needle aspiration cytology up to the hyalinizing trabecular tumor. All these are to be covered in today's topic, which means there are certain things which are not going to be covered or have not been covered by the author, which include the papillary carcinoma, clear cell carcinoma, medullary carcinoma, anaplastic, metastatic lymphoma, etc. So I would like you people to kindly be very critical about the limitations of this topic. Thyroid nodule can be present in about 7% of the population. Generally, females are more than males. And of these, the majority are dominant nodules. Clinically, they might present as a solitary nodule. Thyroid cancer itself is only about 1 to 4% of the palpable nodules, which means it forms about 1.3% of all malignancies. And only 0.4% of such patients might lead to or go in for death. It varies in the geographical regions based on the iodine availability. And regarding the malignancies themselves, this is always mentioned. 80% is papillary, 10 to 15% follicular, and another 10% medullary. Hardly a few can be anaplastic. Regarding malignancies, these points should be borne in mind. Hard, fixed, and it presents as a cold node. So I hope this will give some kind of an idea about what we are going to. We shall continue with our clinical perspective. Poor prognosis. What are the indicators of poor prognosis? 1. Extremes of age. 2. Male patients. 3. Poor differentiations, anaplastic tumors, etc. 4. Obviously, the stage of the tumor. This we all know. Secondly, what is the need for an FNAC? One, to rule out or confirm a malignancy. Once you hit upon a malignancy, then fine. Otherwise, to rule it out. Secondly, to necessitate the surgery. Third one, the need for FNAC, it varies according to the centers. Some centers make FNAC of paramount importance, whether it is guided or unguided, whereas others do without. The rule of the thumb regarding the FNAC of the thyroid. When all should we do it in a case of tumor? Either in the case of a solitary or a dominant nodule. One, direct palpation. When it is palpable, obviously it has to be given importance. Ultrasound guided. They detect a nodule, then either the pathologist helps or the radiologist does it by himself. In the event of a complex cyst, dominant nodule, care should be there. That is why stars are there. And when we do a repeat aspirate, there are some conditions where a repeat aspirate has to be done. For example, a colloid filled nodule, drain all the colloid, still you feel a residual nodule, and FNAC can be repeated. Obviously, when the material is not satisfactory, you have to repeat. What all can we get in our aspirates? This is a case of a watered colloid. Beautiful. You find that it is like a silk saree that you can buy for your Deepavali. There are dark and light areas. Here and there I could see an occasional. Then, when do we suspect a neoplasm? One, when there is a hypercellularity like this. Two, the presence of micro or macro follicles. Third one, a three-dimensional cluster. My professor long time back in JIPMER used to say, a three-dimensional cluster will be exactly like a finger, a papillary carcinoma, etc. Presence of Hürthle cells need not always be a malignancy, but then it should warn us about. So these are some indicators for a neoplasm. And the methods of doing an FNAC, it can be a wet or a dry method, depending on the stain that you are going to do. Cytospin, cell blocks, micropore filter techniques. And you'll have to prepare a cell block when you want to do an IHC. Molecular genetic analysis. All these can be requirements for an FNAC. And the author gives a comment about the adequacy of the specimen. There should be 6 groups of cells, and each group should be having about 10 to 20 cells. These should be present in at least 2 of the slides. Only then you can say that your aspirate is adequate. Also, after doing everything, how do you report on a thyroid aspirate? It can be like this: non-diagnostic, non-neoplastic and benign, follicular lesion, suspicious of malignancy. It can be follicular, papillary, medullary, anaplastic, or large cell. Diagnostic of malignancy. And these have been given the following numbers which can be mentioned. It is some kind of a protocol that is being followed for the report on thyroid aspirates. Interpretation. Invasion is mandatory for the diagnosis of a follicular malignancy. This is a golden rule. For undergraduates also we say, what is the conclusive step for malignancy? It has to be invasion and metastasis. The lesions themselves can be divided into follicular and non-follicular, papillary, inflammatory, colloid, and the cracking of the colloid. Here I find that there is a cracking of the mosaic pattern that could be seen. Here again, a crack that could be seen. There is another skill called the scrap cytology in a colloid goiter. Look at the amount of monolayered cells that you people can see. That is one of the techniques you people can go through it. The topic for the day, of course, is the nodule. The nodule, it can be solitary, one-sided, both clinical as well as radiological. And this is what we see. We find that the lesion is circumscribed and it is filled, or rather surrounded by colloid-filled parenchyma. There is a difference in the two regions. This is also a colloid lesion, a solitary lesion in which there has been an area of hemorrhage. This is a normal thyroid that we see. So this is what we call as changes in the thyroid nodule after preoperative FNAC. Surgery has not been done, but you have done the FNAC. What are all the changes it can cause? There is something called the needle tract hemorrhage. Secondly, there can be granulation tissue. If it is a little late, there can be hemosiderin-laden macrophages, cholesterol crystals, and there can be follicles which are enlarged and atypical. Follicles within the capsule are linear and they are not mushroom shaped. Linear in the sense they follow the track of the needle. If it is going to be mushroom shaped towards the capsule, we should be warned of malignancy. Squamous metaplasia can be present and tumor infarction. So these are all the changes which can be caused. FNAC of the thyroid itself is a question for you people. So you will have to mention about FNA, FNAC, ultrasound guided, what are the requirements, what are the pitfalls, what are the changes that can be caused by FNAC. We will then go to the next one, the nodular goiter. Nodular goiter is what we see. Initially, the thyroid has got something like this. It is filled with multiple colloid-filled spaces. The septae are hardly discernible. But later on, I find that there can be proliferation in some areas. There can be towards one pole of the follicular cyst. This, the books can give us Sanderson's pulses, particularly when there are papillary projections. Look at this particular specimen. Obviously, it is nodular. And if you look at it carefully, there are colloid-filled follicles of varying sizes. Some areas are appearing solid and they are all separated by incomplete septae. There might be degenerative changes which are there. So this is a little worrisome both to the surgeon as well as to the pathologist. Sometimes we do find neoplastic changes or even areas suspicious of malignancy, which we might have diagnosed or missed in the FNAC. Two things you'll have to remember always. Why should you be very careful? One, there is an element called as adenomatoid hyperplasia or adenomatous hyperplasia. And in this, I'll be able to see that there are fibrous septae, there are multiple colloid-filled follicles. The follicles are of varying sizes. Invariably, they are being lined by flattened cells. On the other hand, I am finding a definite follicle over here, and it is filled with a population of follicles which is totally different from the normal thyroid. The colloid is scanty. So what am I trying to arrive at? You will have to look for the capsule, the uniformity within the capsule, compression of the normal thyroid tissue. In this case, for example, it is an adenoma. As the adenoma expands, there will be the compression of the normal thyroid parenchyma outside. Uniformity within the capsule, differences between within and without the capsule. And in the case of a nodular goiter, there can be Sanderson's pulses that could be seen. So these are all the things that you people should remember in the differentiation between a nodular goiter and an adenomatous hyperplasia and a follicular adenoma. This is a classical question that is always asked and you people should answer. So this is yet another example I'm finding well developed but incomplete septae, and there are the thyroid follicles. Look at this one. There is not much of histological difference between this side and this side. Yet, some of these nodules can become more active, and I find that there is a different population. But what happens is there is no clear-cut capsule over here. So this becomes a dominant nodule that can be seen in an adenomatous hyperplasia. Next. Now, in an adenomatoid hyperplasia or an adenomatoid nodule, you find that there can be follicles of varying sizes. Areas of hemorrhage and calcification are always the note of the day in a case of a nodular goiter. However, they are lined by flattened epithelium. Some nodule can become solid because of overactivity. Hürthle cell activity can be present, and some of the follicles might show Sanderson's polsters. These papillae should not be confused with papillary carcinoma. Atypical nuclei, you will have to look for a ground glass appearance. There can be even grooving, and then a malignancy has to be ruled. That is why never jump into making a diagnosis. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. A beautiful quote by Alexander Pope. Follicular carcinoma. Unfortunately or fortunately, between adenoma and carcinoma, there is not much of difference. All the other features, such as dysplasia, pleomorphism, mitotic figures, etc., need not be diagnostic. Only two criteria are there. One is a capsular invasion, another is a vascular invasion. So I am finding that there is a capsular invasion and it is going into the surrounding tissue. It cannot be identified generically, and all these will have to be excluded. Follicular variant of papillary carcinoma, Hürthle cell carcinoma, poorly differentiated carcinoma. The patients with follicular carcinoma are 10 years older than those with papillary carcinoma. It presents as a cold nodule, and histologically there can be various forms, solid, cribriform, etc. And as I mentioned earlier, you will have to look for these two elements. These are the markers which you will have to look for in a case of a malignancy. The vascular invasion itself can be doubtful. In this case, for example, it is not traversing the entire thickness of the capsule, in which case you will have to look for any vascular invasion. Grossly, it appears encapsulated, but it is fleshy on the cut surface. It resembles an adenoma. Microscopically, you find that there can be thick-walled vessels of the venous caliber. There will be tumor cells in the capsule or sometimes outside the capsule. If you are not very clear about the vascular invasion, look at this particular slide. I am finding some kind of a vascular endothelium. Maybe at a higher magnification, I will be able to identify the elements of blood. But then I will have to confirm the diagnosis by means of these markers such as endothelium in a case of IHC, factor VIII related antigen, lectin, or Ulex europaeus 1 lectin. The entire capsular thickness, if it is involved, then fine, we are safe. Also make a note that this nodular lesion, this is a case of actually a follicular variant of a papillary carcinoma, but it is present within and it is infiltrating the parenchyma of the thyroid. It is not outside. So this has to be borne as a differential diagnosis when we are seeing. It is not uncommon to see a microscopic focus of a papillary carcinoma in a case that was otherwise diagnosed as a multinodular goiter. These two elements have been given in the recent advances, minimally invasive and widely invasive. So I would like you people to kindly study because these themselves have been asked as questions. Minimally invasive is grossly encapsulated, solid, fleshy, resembles an adenoma, and I mentioned the vessels should be of the venous caliber. These markers should be positive. And metastasis is rare. Widely invasive, you find that the vessels outside the capsule are involved. The adjacent tissue is also involved. The tumor is generally poorly differentiated. There can be metastasis. The lesion itself is pulsatile. Sometimes, not very uncommonly, you see a pulsatile lesion even in the scalp. It turns out to be a metastatic follicular carcinoma. So kindly by heart these, it is of importance to you. This is another classification that I picked up from the net. There is nothing to be said about this, kindly by heart. What are all the benign lesions, malignant lesions, everything is given. I would like you people to kindly go through. The papillary carcinoma, sometimes it can be solid with scanty colloid, but yet it will appear in the form of follicles. I am finding multiple follicles. It is called a solitary variant of papillary carcinoma or a follicular variant of papillary carcinoma. It is diagnosed by means of clearing of the chromatin, orphan in nucleus, grooving of the nucleus. Sometimes the pseudo inclusions can be present, thick nuclear membrane. This is another feature that we should have in mind. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see microfollicles or macrofollicles, scanty colloid, and a chewing gum like colloid. And this is the study that you people will have to do. RT-PCR is done for RET-PTC gene for rearrangements. The oxyphilic adenoma is another variant that has been mentioned. Look at this oxyphilic cells. They are large cells, Hertel-like cells, and they are supposed to be resembling the hepatocytes. They can be solid, or sometimes you can get a follicular component, or sometimes you can get even a papillary configuration. The lower picture is a better bet. I find that it is a well capsulated lesion. There is the sheet of follicular cells on the inside. Outside, I am finding the colloid filled parenchyma. There is a uniformity within and without the capsule. And also, I find that the normal thyroid parenchyma is becoming compressed. So, these are the features of an adenoma. And it forms about 50% of the Hertel cell lesions. These are the categories that can be included in it. Grossly, it is tan colored and it is encapsulated. Microscopically, all these variants are there. Medullary carcinoma by itself is a question. I am not going into the details. Granular eosinophilic cytoplasm because of abundant mitochondria. And inspissated colloid lamination. This can again be a misleading component wherein we will think of a papillary carcinoma. If it is going to be the Hertel cell tumors have got these criteria. 75% of the cells are oncocytic. The tumor itself is deep brown on the cut surface. Microvasculature, we had mentioned about infarction that could be caused due to FNAC. Greater malignant potential, it can be scantily, but then positive for TTF as well as galectin-3. And T67 is greater positive in a case of malignant transformation. Metastasis is more common in this variant, and the molecular pathogenesis mechanism is mandatory for a diagnosis. And some books say that both the papillary as well as the follicular carcinoma can have a component of this Hertel cells. And these are all the microscopic variants. You people can go through them. Oxyphilic carcinoma, it is a malignant one. Rarely you can have a papillary variant of Hertel cell carcinoma. Sometimes it is encapsulated, in which case it behaves as benign. Malignant, it invades into the surrounding parenchyma in a lobulated manner. Pleomorphism, abundant mitochondria, positive for thyroglobin or carcinoembryonic antigen. We'll have to look for anyway for capsular or vascular invasion. Involves a older age group, solid, trabecular, all these forms can be there. Regarding the metastasis, lung, liver, bone, and the cervical lymph node are common sites for metastasis. This is a Hurthle cell tumor. I find that there is a tumor over here. There are some, so it becomes doubtful. And in this case, the doubt is solved because I am finding a clear-cut vascular invasion. And the Hurthle cell nature of these cells is undoubted. This is a source of it. And look at this one, large cells, granular cytoplasm, vesicular nucleus. Regarding immunohistochemistry, you find that this can be a trabecular variant, etc. PAX8 can be positive. There can be a mild positivity that is seen within the ring. The arrow is showing towards. Other markers can be TTF1. Look at this region, it is positive, whereas here it is uninvolved. Thyroglobulin is another marker that is used in a case of. This is a beautiful chart that I would like you people to sit, spend time and read. Though I have inserted some, it is a case of a solitary nodule which may be palpable, which is not palpable. And it can be a toxic nodule or otherwise. It may be non-diagnostic. It can be a cystic lesion. If it is benign, then what do you do? If it is malignant, what do you do? And what do you proceed with it? This is a beautiful flow diagram that I derived from the net, and it is in context with the topic. How do you actually proceed or approach a solitary nodule of the thyroid? And these are circles that have been put by me. I would like you people to concentrate and go through the flow diagram. What do you do when it is not palpable? What do you do when it is palpable? Again, when it is non-diagnostic, what do you do? And if it is going to be a cystic lesion, how do you proceed with it? And what is the follow-up for the benign lesions? And what are the conditions where there is an increased amount of risk are all given here. I would like you people to spend some time and read this particular flow diagram. It will be useful for your approach to a nodule of thyroid, which is an essay question. So this is again a follicular variant of a medullary carcinoma. See, a range of appearances can be seen in medullary carcinoma, scattered follicular cells. There can be some amount of entrapped colloid. But if you do get abundant amyloid, etc., it is diagnostic. Sometimes you will be having a collision tumor of both a follicular as well as a medullary carcinoma, in which case calcitonin will be positive, thyroglobulin will be positive. So mixed follicular and medullary carcinoma. Calcitonin and thyroglobulin are positive. I find that there is a follicular carcinoma at one end, and here the cells are a little more spindloid, the nuclei are varied, and it is a medullary carcinoma. Why do you get two tumors from this? They say it can arise from the stem cells from the ultimobranchial body, or it can be a collision tumor, which is quite rare. So there are two individual tumor components. And to confirm, you'll have to make the use of these markers. This Thomas Giordano, he has done a great deal of work in the identification of these tumors. He is a pathologist by himself, and another variant that has been mentioned in the recent advances is hyalinizing trabecular tumor. This tumor has got these features. What we can observe is I am finding a trabeculae. A trabeculae means it is about 3 or 4 cells thick, whereas a sinusoid will be just about 2 cells. And it is not straight. I find that it is undulating or bending. The trabeculae are not straight, they can be curved, they can be undulating. Nuclei are elongated. I hope you people are able to appreciate the elongated nuclei of these. And also the cells also appear a little longer. Nuclear grooving can be present. And look at this particular picture. It is again a hyalinizing trabecular tumor in which I am finding there are some areas, pinkish areas, which is hyalinization. So these should be borne in mind and written as a differential diagnosis. And this itself has been asked as a question. And these are the points to ponder. It is a multidisciplinary approach of which the pathologist should be included. FNAC is the first step. There has to be wide sampling to rule out invasion. If it is 3 centimeters around the entire cut surface. The markers we had mentioned: calcitonin, thyroglobulin, PHBME, galactin 3, etc. Hürthle cell variations, what are all the conditions where it can be present? And the follicular variant of papillary carcinoma should be borne in mind. And as a conclusion, it is not a diagnosis itself. Today, molecular analysis is required in addition to histopathology and IHC. This symbol indicates by heart. You will have to write it in the exam. If it is going to be a follicular carcinoma, then you look for PAX8 or PPAR fusion. Papillary carcinoma, RET, that is rearrangement gene, will have to be looked for. And all these are important, but then they are yet to translate into routine investigations. Till then, histopathology and IHC form the yardsticks. This is the pathologist whom we are talking about. He is an endocrine and a molecular pathologist, Thomas Giardino from Michigan. Fantabulous pictures. And there's a picture from his work. Look at the nuclear groove. Look at the clarity of it. Hats off to him. And the questions that you people could be asked will be these. I hope you people are able to revise the topic and write it in an organized manner.